Hello, welcome to a weekly astrological forecast for the 15th through the 21st-ish. Think I'm going to do. When you look at the astrological calendar this week, there isn't as much supposedly to talk about compared to the last 2 months, but there actually is a couple major points here. One of them I really like. I think everyone's going to like it, at least generally what it looks like on paper. I'm making this video as we're going waxing towards the full moon in Gemini. You could check out the full moon in Gemini video that I did up top. I'll place it up there. But I'm making this as we're going to full moon in Gemini, which is such a big deal because Mercury at that point too will stop its retrograde motion in Sagittarius. So this weekend and what we take into the next week has that tattoo of those transits. Mercury's always a player and will be this week, not necessarily on paper by transits, but there will be something later in the week that's connected to all this that's a little bit more freeing finally for Mercury and starts to pick up speed and starts to run on all cylinders, right? Saying that, we always want to make a note of a lunation and a full moon. So you're going to be watching this probably during a full moon, a Saturday, Sunday into Monday. And you just have to look to the Gemini and Sagittarius parts of your chart for the themes that are going on there. But as always with Gemini, ruled by Mercury, a Mercury that's stationing retrograde, is a lot of activity. But my opinion is I wouldn't push hard on mercurial conversations and decisions, so on and so forth. Let the pieces settle, and slowly in the next couple weeks, you'll get to make decisions and say certain truths. Okay. So saying that, let's start with the 16th, the Monday. At this point, the moon's in Cancer. Moon goes into Cancer on the 15th on the Sunday, and then the moon goes into Cancer for several days here, which will make harmonious trine to Saturn and keep going. I think the 17th on the Tuesday, I'm in the Pacific time zone, by the way, is interesting here because then the moon goes into Leo at 3:39 p.m. And okay, it's just another moon in Leo, but it isn't. Because basically in the beginning parts of this moon in Leo, like the first day, it's going to be opposite Pluto in Aquarius, and then it trines the nodes. We go into the 18th on the Wednesday, and then we have early in the morning, 1:12 a.m. Pacific on the Wednesday, that the moon is conjunct Mars in Leo, which is currently retrograde now. So for those who are affected by this, you're a Leo, Aquarius, fixed signs, you have planets in your chart between, let's say, 0 and 6 degrees. This actually affects you, and you need to pay attention to this. And pay attention whenever the moon's going to hit Leo or Mars in Leo and Mars in Cancer in the next few months. Okay, so things get a little Mars right now is not functioning the way it wants to, at least. It's going to try to take action, initiate, and fulfill the desire, okay? It's going to try to do it in Leo and express itself, but it's not running on all cylinders. And here, if someone has engaged this who's distinctly affected by this transit, you're going to catch it again here this week. And so, use the ways to regulate your emotional realm. Mars or Moon in Leo wants to express whatever it's feeling, and when it's dialed in, will share in that generosity and will want to hear the expression from those closest to them, right? It's emotionally fulfilling when that happens. With Mars, though, this is kind of taken to a height where it feels like it's boiling over, or it's been boiling over for a while. And we just got last week, Mars and Venus were opposite each other. We had Venus in Aquarius, Mars and Leo on the other side, and Mars is trying to push its agenda, and Venus in Aquarius autonomously doesn't need to participate in all that. It has its own space. It might listen to the Mars in Leo. It might not. It just might walk away like that's your story. That's your deal. You need to take care of it. It has nothing to do with me. We all have our autonomous spaces. We take care of ourselves. Then we come into positions where we join and we have regulated, balanced interactions. That is the lesson, at least, has Mars and Leo learned this? And if they haven't felt like haven't been heard, etc., again, emotional situation here for the Leos possibly here, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the Thursday. So Mars will conjunct Moon Mars at 1:12 a.m. on Pacific, and then it's later in the day, or so many hours later, that we have the Sun in Sagittarius make a square with Neptune in Pisces. And here is an interesting space for the Sagittarians in general because I think they've been through a lot the last several weeks with the Mercury retrograde that's occurred, right? And there's so much more to that story with Jupiter and Gemini retrograde, and in the background, an ongoing challenge between the planet of expansion, Jupiter, in Gemini, which wants to expand in the mind, but going retrograde, so it's going through fumbling here or going too far. And then in the background, Saturn has been slowly squaring this, wanting to bring solid foundations, solid boundaries, a solid system to help crystallize the vision of Jupiter and Gemini. And Jupiter and Gemini is, along with that Mercury retrograde, not flowing, but a lot of lessons to be learned in all that. And so this is in the background this whole month. But now Neptune in Sagittarius throws its dissolving filter on the Sagittarius sun. Now, this can happen several different ways. Sagittarius could take whatever it's ingesting knowledge wise, or let's say they're micro dosing or something like that. Something like that. That's Neptune throwing its dissolving filter on the Sagittarius, kind of wanting to slowly wash away, let's say, some of the truth taking or the mind seeking that's been going on with Sagittarius, and maybe they've been doing it on multiple angles, multiple mind irons in the fire, multiple seeking of certain pieces of knowledge or shooting for multiple stars. How much multiple can you do, Sagittarius? How much can you do? And so for me, when I see Neptune here, it wants to slow things down, dissolve these filters that might not be actually working for Sagittarius these days. And it's actually a conduit, actually, for me to a dream world or to the divine, etc. The other side of this is the narrative that I've been pushing here on this channel with Sagittarius of like what's true and what's not. Or as fellow astrologer Rick Levine, if you're watching, he loves this call the Sagittarius the sign Exaggitarius, and it makes me laugh every time I hear this because it's true. Because if it's going pushing too far, it starts to exaggerate itself, right? Whether they know it or not, pontificating, etc., selling you on something that really doesn't have any basis. They're selling it to themselves. Are they being overly optimistic all the time and not really seeing the reality of things? And that's what Saturn's bringing in these days. Neptune here kind of stops the whole situation for a second and gives Sagittarius an opportunity to see beyond. Just careful of going beyond. It depends on what vessels you use to go beyond or to dissolve. If it's in a healthy way, I'm all for it. If it's in some other way where you're like distracting yourself, feeling like you're going beyond, this is what we have to be careful of. Saying that 6:28 a.m. Sun square Neptune. Moon continues the later in the day on Wednesday in Leo, opposite that Venus in Aquarius, that continues the Venus Mars opposition that happened the week before, and makes several other aspects into Thursday the 19th. And here is the sweet spot of the week. And I actually think it's not just on this day, but it's Venus in Aquarius making a trine harmonious 120-degree aspect to Jupiter and Gemini. It's air with air, and here's the flow. I know this because I live this in my chart. And here, sociability is kind of in front, in the mind, the sharing of things. And it's not just of ideas, it's just the nice, good banter about whatever, right? And Venus in Aquarius has the ideas and wants to relate and share with the community and accept the other community, everybody else in the community's ideas, whatever they have to say. And everybody gets to be their own freaky individualistic self, right? If it's happening, if it's rolling on all cylinders, right? That's how Venus Aquarius rolls. And they're also dealing with alternative relationship structures, right? And they like to explore this and do this, and that creates freedom, right? And within freedom, we have a different way of exploring in the mind. And then the ideas that come from those places, Aquarius is the master of taking those ideas that might be far-fetched or no one might understand because it might be weird or not of this time, but of future times. And they have a way of synthesizing this stuff and then eventually taking it and then wanting to share it back into the world and the community. And then here's Jupiter in Gemini, who's all about the word and all about communicating. And at this point, Mercury in Sagittarius that rules that Jupiter in Gemini, it's currently retrograde, right? It's retrograde. It's not what it wants to be, but at least Mercury's moving forward now. So there's a lot of fire and air happening here. And I think take advantage of this one if you're affected by this in your chart, the sociability of it, the sharing. Uh, Purchases could happen here, tech purposes, right? So we're dealing with air signs that deal with technology, right? We're in the holidays for many people. People have already bought stuff last couple of weeks during the Mercury retrograde. You might be returning some of that stuff or tweaking it, but purchases, Venus and money, right, and resources, it actually might be something that you need. And from those parts of your chart, how the Aquarius and Gemini parts of your chart are relating to each other, tech purchases, something like that, mixed in with helping those communicate within duality relationships or multiple relationships, so on and so forth. When you have two benefics, two planets like Venus, who just wants to feel good and live through the senses, and you have a planet like Jupiter that is thinking of the best at this point, or envisioning the best, or wanting the best, and to communicate that and have fun with the communication with this. And these two getting together, we have a great sweet spot for the week. If you're going to pick anything to kind of like, uh, uh, I thought I would never say this, to stand against or to be hold on a rock or something like that. I would never think it would be Gemini and Aquarius, two signs that are air. But in this week, I think it's that way. And this is in a secret, deep, deep way. And you know how I roll on this channel because that's how I really am. I only show you this much. My other worlds and what I do is of this deep, secret place is Pluto's in Aquarius right now. And next year, or Jupiter is in Gemini right now, right? But next July, the planet Uranus will leave Taurus and it will enter Gemini and start to touch upon a story that's going to last 7 years. And the two heavy hitters in astrology, Pluto and Uranus, will be trining each other for years. So, on a mundane, big cultural level, this is a major shift coming. This week is little hints of when air signs get together and what happens, right? So we know we're living in a massive, speedy technological age, and there's pros and cons to all this. If you can think air, if you can think clearly and cleanly, and let yourself bring in something that's a little freaky idea wise, and can you touch that and grab it and store it up here for later or work on something, that's my little secret something for you in the next couple of years, okay? So Venus Jupiter trine that happens at 6:10 p.m. on Thursday, December 19th. All air signs, we deserve this right now, actually, because we've been overloaded. I think we deserve something like this. And you fire signs, by the way, are affected by this. Later that night and going into the 20th, the moon will run into Virgo. And this is kind of this Thursday going into Friday. This is where Mercury in Sagittarius starts to kick in a different way because it's not retrograde anymore and it's slowly starting to get its engines revving up to start to move forward slowly. The reason is Mercury rules that Jupiter in Gemini I just talked about. But when the moon goes into Virgo the 19th and the 20th, Mercury rules the moon in Virgo. So for 2.5 days, from the 19th to the 21st, the Virgo moon will be wanting discerning emotionally, right? And wanting to take care of the little things. And moon and Virgo people in general, if let's say you were relating with them and you were around them and I'm telling you, they studied your habits. They won't say anything in the beginning, but once you get on an intimate level with them, they studied your habits and they might even be critical of your habits. And depending on the moon and Virgo person, their delivery, as into like their discernment about like what, you actually can do these little things if you tweak this in your system of your life, and you actually might feel and walk away a little bit more happier. And your life, if it's running efficiently, You could have this. This could be this. And, they're very sensitive to these things, actually. And depending on how intertwined they are with you, they're going to be sensitive to your situation. Whatever you do will touch their sensitivity, and they cannot help but want to tweak it and fix it. Okay, that's partly what they do, but in a sense too, they're great concoctors of solutions. And what I mean by this is, as being a Mercury ruled moon sign and an earth based sign, they're the ones, let's say symbolically, metaphorically, they have behind me, imagine behind me, there's jars of herbs, and you come to me and you're like, I am doing and dealing with this, I'm feeling this. And they're going to be like, okay, tell me more. And they're going to ask you a lot of questions. And they're going to like, what time do you go to sleep at night? What time do you wake up? And what are you eating at this time? Blah, blah, blah. And then all this kind of stuff. And then like, okay. And then they're going to go behind where all these imaginary jars of herbs are. And they're going to do the concoction, and it's sacred concoction. It's ritualistic. It's no joke, So you take their advice if they're balanced with all this stuff, and that's the ability of that. So in a sense, healing can come from this. Certain types of efficiency in whatever systems you have in your life that you need, the day by day activities. This is what Virgo deals with. So saying that, Mercury's the ruler of that sign. It's kind of interesting. On the 20th, the moon will square that Mercury to continue this retrograde story and this ongoing mutable story we've had, right? The Jupiter Saturn square in mutable signs that I mentioned earlier. And then when we get to Saturday, this moon in Virgo will be making a contact with Saturn opposition, squaring Jupiter, a trine with Uranus. Again, I think this is actually workable. Everything I just told you from squares to oppositions can feel like very caustic, or it's challenging to work through something. That's the point. At the same time, if you've been understanding what has been happening the last 3 to 5 weeks with Mercury being in Sagittarius, with the ongoing story with Jupiter and Gemini here since the end of May, the ongoing story with Saturn and Pisces, all signs that are mutable. Here we have this weekend pretty much what they call a grand mutable cross. So it's like this, and it's very tense. It's kind of a major testing point for all mutable signs. But if you've been paying attention the last several weeks with the Mercury retrograde and making your notes and seeing what isn't working and what does work, I actually think you can use the moon in Virgo this weekend, right? To find those concoctions and those solutions and start to piece together things, right? And then start to use that in the next several weeks. Long winded, but I'm mutable. Now, how could I forget something that actually happens on Saturday, and it is the beginning of the Capricorn birthdays. That will happen at 1:20 a.m. Pacific on the 21st, and we all know what that really is here. We all know what that really means, though. It means happy, merry solstice to you wherever you are in the world. If it's the beginning of winter here in the northern hemisphere, we are entering it. And for those of you in the southern hemisphere, wherever you are, it's the beginning of summer. I've seen some of the temperatures kick in already this week with some of this stuff in South America, but in places like New Zealand and Australia, summer's already hitting. I've seen the temperatures. Saying that, I want to wish everybody here a solstice. It's a major point in between seasons. And in a sense, this week with the mutability involved, with the with Jupiter and Gemini, Mercury and Sagittarius moving forward, and the moon going into Virgo, remember, anything immutable is there to get you ready for the next season, right? That's what mutable signs do. And in a sense, we have a slow shift happening, mutable wise, into the solstice that happens on the 21st and 22nd for some of you out there. Now, saying that, for some of you in the southern hemisphere, I just want to let you know, if you made it this far, that I actually am going to be in the southern hemisphere at the latter half of January and the first week of February. I will be in Australia at that time. If some of you on my channel know, you're in the Brisbane, Gold Coast areas, possibly Sydney areas, all on the west coast over there. I'm going to be wandering around be around there. If you are around there, if you want to get a session in person with me face to face, I will have some times open if we could figure out the configurations. I can't wait to go down there. It's been a long time coming. Some of you heard me on my live stream saying to all the people I know down there, I'm like, one day I'm going to make it out there. Well, it's happening. I'm going to be around there. Again, you message me through Instagram or through here on YouTube. There should be, just go to my website, the contact link, so on and so forth. Make a comment. If you're interested, let me know. I'm going to be in Australia in that hot weather. I'm psyched for it actually to get down there. So, saying that, I want to say again, Merry Happy Solstice to all of you. I'm going to disappear for a couple days here. I have a little surprises are coming too by the end of the year. I just need to get my head down and grind. In the meantime, there might be another video I put up here about the full moon that I did in Gemini. And that's it. I'll take advantage of this week. Mercury's moving forward. Here we are. We're all gearing up here to the 24th here when we do this intense square that we're building up with Jupiter and Saturn. More info on that coming soon. Okay. On that note, I think I need to drink a nice cup of hot tea. I'll see you on the next video.